Catus, Maximus here, this time with a quick review of the Mac M2R. So this is an older Mac, as we can tell. It doesn't have like their kind of curved logo. This is a standard logo. You might say this looks like one of those New Britain designs, and I believe you're right. It's actually one of the quarter-inch ones that has eluded me, but fiddling around with this little ratchet. It doesn't have a kind of a standard feel to the reverse lever. Quite a bit of motion. It's actually quite stiff. There's a little bit of play, but when you actually get it to reverse, it's actually, once again, pretty rigid. So, who knew that New Britain, or that Mac Tools was getting ratchets from New Britain? Isn't made perfectly, but it's not too bad. And does have a lot of anvil play. These didn't originally come with snap rings, so somebody put a snap ring in there to help tighten it up. Probably one of the worst things about the New Britain design was they just had terrible play. They just pretty much felt that their design was so good that they just could have atrocious tolerances in the heads. Not all of them are like that, but quite a few. I just think it's interesting that even Mac Tools decided that their design was that good. A lot of people like the Craftsman RHFT, the Eastco ratchets, but I personally really like these versions here, the New Britain. So let's go ahead and pop this open. Get annoying little snap ring. And let's just pop the rest of this out. And indeed it is. This is the New Britain floating pawl design. I'm actually pretty surprised by that. Overall, this thing seems pretty decent. We know it's New Britain. It's really odd because the way these work is you actually push the lever one way and it causes the pawl to snap in the opposite direction, like so. Kind of interesting. Always kind of like that design. And one of the reasons it works so well is this pawl here, as you can see, is floating. And so it's kind of like a pairhead ratchet design, but in a round head. And you get this really long pawl with a bunch of teeth. And then it's just, when the side of this ratchet body hits it, you can see this slanted angle, pushes it out into the ratchet and gives it some pretty good traction. Or I should say engagement. So versus the rocking pawl, this is a very strong design because this is the body of the anvil itself is just pressing against the pawl. So very strong. You're not relying on any kind of pins where the pawl rocks back and forth on. And it really was the genius of the New Britain design, is just the fact that it's pretty darn strong. And the floating pawl seems to be pretty darn reliable. And it's pretty neat that even Mac saw that they are pretty decent. So what I'm going to do is try to find a washer to shim it up even tighter and toss this thing back together. Quick note about tightening up the head. Somebody already did use a snap ring. Snap rings tend to be just a little bit thicker than, say, the spiral retaining springs that they use that these come with by default. But in this case, that isn't enough. So I do take apart various power tools and stuff, and so you find various shim washers. And so that's essentially what I'm using here. Maybe I should get some of the hair off of that. Found one that's just the right size. It just drops in there, and that should be just perfect. Hopefully it's not too thick. Really what I found there was probably just about perfect. Just a little bit tight, but that'll wear in just pretty soon. And just doing a little bit of extra shimming took that really loose pawl and now made it just about perfectly tight. And that's how you really shim up these round head ratchets, and it's especially the ones that have an internal retention ring, because that actually makes it a lot easier to shim them versus the ones that have the external retention rings. Those are a bit more complex. And whoop, works just great. And once again, it's always nice to find one of these New Britons and be able to tighten it right up. As far as the strength of the detent, pretty good. And no slipping. I've actually ran into a Blackhawk that was a New Britain made ratchet, and it actually slipped a little bit, but it's pretty rare to find one of these New Britons that do slip, just because of the massive amount of surface area that they have. So anyway, neat little ratchet. Just wanted to throw out a review showing that even Mac Tools bought the new bit and ratchets, and it's neat to see one and this tiny little 1/4 inch. Anyway, I really appreciate everybody who's been watching and subscribing. If you haven't subscribed, please do. Till next time, Catus Maximus out.